Hi, welcome back. Or welcome if you're new here. Either way, I'm really glad you're here right now because tonight we're going into something that I think a lot of us feel but almost nobody actually talks about out loud. And I mean really talks about it, not just in a therapy session or in a journal you keep hidden under your bed. We're talking about that specific kind of fear, the one that sneaks up on you when everything is actually going really well. When you're lying next to someone who is genuinely wonderful, and instead of feeling peaceful, your brain starts quietly panicking. You know the feeling I'm talking about, right? Like you're sitting across from this person at dinner. They remembered your coffee order without you telling them. They asked about the thing you mentioned 2 weeks ago that you figured they forgot. They laugh at your jokes, even the bad ones. And they look at you like you're the most interesting person they've ever met. And instead of just sitting in that and enjoying it, you feel this tiny cold wave of something. Fear, maybe. Dread, almost. Like you're watching a really good movie and you already know the twist at the end is going to hurt. That feeling has a name, by the way. A lot of names, actually. Some people call it imposter syndrome in dating. Some people call it relationship anxiety. Some people on Reddit, and honestly, this is the most relatable description I've ever heard, call it waiting for the other shoe to drop. And if you've ever felt that way, I need you to know something before we go any further tonight. You are not broken. You are not dramatic. You are not too much. You are a person who has been shaped by experiences, and your nervous system is just trying to protect you the only way it knows how. So tonight we're unpacking all of it. Why this happens, what it actually means, how it can quietly wreck something beautiful if you're not careful, and most importantly, what to do about it. Get comfortable. This one's going to be a long, cozy, honest conversation. Just you and me. Okay, so let me set the scene a little more specifically because I think the more specific we get, the more you're going to go, oh my God, that is me. Picture this. You've been seeing someone for a few months, and this person is genuinely great. Not perfect in a weird, too polished way. Just great. Like, they're kind. They follow through. When they say they're going to call, they call. When you have a bad day, they don't fix it with toxic positivity. They just sit with you in it. They're emotionally present. They have their life together. And they clearly, visibly choose you. And you are terrified. Not because they've done anything wrong. Not because there are actual red flags. But because some quiet voice in the back of your head keeps whispering, this doesn't add up. What are they getting out of this? When are they going to realize? When is the catch going to show itself? I read a post online once where someone described it perfectly. They said, I'm in the best relationship I've ever had. He's devoted, kind, tells me every day how lucky he feels. And I spend most of my time just waiting to find out he's secretly terrible, because no one is actually this good. And the comments under that post were just hundreds of people saying me too. Me too. I do this too. I thought I was the only one. You are not the only one. There's actually a whole psychological pattern behind this, and the blog post I wrote about it on Bissful breaks it down into 4 reasons your brain goes down this road. And I want to walk through each one tonight, because I think understanding why this happens is kind of the first step to not letting it run your entire love life. So let's start with the first one, and honestly maybe the most sneaky of all 4. Okay. Reason number 1. And I'm calling this one the imposter complex because that's exactly what it is. You know how imposter syndrome works in a career context, right? Like you get the promotion, or you land the big client, or someone calls you an expert at something, and instead of feeling proud, you feel like a fraud. Like at any moment someone's going to tap you on the shoulder and go, hey, we made a mistake. You don't actually belong here. Dating imposter syndrome is the exact same thing, but in your love life. Your partner calls you amazing. They tell their friends about you. They show up for you consistently. And every time they do something wonderful, instead of just receiving it, you feel a deadline you can't meet. Like they've set a bar so high that it's only a matter of time before you trip over it. Every compliment becomes a countdown clock. Every loving gesture becomes a reminder of how much you could lose. And here's the really wild part. It doesn't matter how many times they show up for you. It doesn't matter how consistent they are. Because the imposter feeling isn't actually about them. It's about how you see yourself. I saw a guy on a forum once who wrote, "She is the total package, and I'm just me." We've been together almost 34 years. She has never once shown me that this might be true. She's literally the perfect partner. And I still feel this way. 34 years. And he still felt like he didn't belong in his own relationship. That broke my heart a little when I read it. Because you can see so clearly from the outside that the story he's telling himself has nothing to do with reality. His wife chose him. She keeps choosing him every single day for decades. And his brain still won't let him fully believe he deserves that. That's the imposter complex. And the antidote, and I'll get to the antidotes properly later, but the seed of it is this: receiving love is a skill. It's something you actually have to practice. Okay, reason number 2. And this one hits different if you've had a certain kind of relationship history. So here's the deal. If your previous relationships were basically a revolving door of people who didn't show up, people who were emotionally unavailable or inconsistent or a little bit chaotic, then being treated really well can feel genuinely off-putting. Like something is wrong. Your nervous system got calibrated to dysfunction. You learn the rules of a certain kind of relationship. You give 110%, you get 10% back, you manage their moods, you walk on eggshells, you work really hard to be chosen, and that's what felt like normal love to you. So when someone comes along who just gives freely, who doesn't make you earn their attention, who isn't hot and cold or mysterious or difficult to pin down, your brain doesn't recognize it as safe. It actually registers it as suspicious. Like there's this psychological principle that says we are drawn toward what feels familiar, even when familiar is not good for us. Because the nervous system doesn't care if something is good for you. It cares if it feels known. And a person who treats you well, consistently, without drama, that might feel unfamiliar. Which means it might feel wrong, even though it's the most right thing you've ever had. I think about the women I've talked to who described finally being in a healthy relationship and saying things like, "I don't know what to do with myself. I keep waiting for him to pull back. I keep waiting for the argument that never comes. I keep trying to find the catch." And one thing I keep coming back to is this idea of peace feeling unfamiliar. Like when everything is calm in a relationship and instead of relaxing, you go into hypervigilance. You start scanning the horizon for threats that aren't there. Your body doesn't know how to be still when love has always come with noise. Reason number 3 is one I genuinely think about all the time, and I think it's the one that trips up the most people because it feels so logical in the moment. You are comparing your behind the scenes to their highlight reel. Okay, so think about it. You know yourself completely. You know every embarrassing thought you've had this week. You know about the time you sent that text you definitely should not have sent. You know about your 3 a.m. anxiety spirals, your weird fear of phone calls, the fact that you cried at that one commercial, your complicated relationship with your family, all your unfinished projects, every version of yourself that didn't work out. You see yourself as a work in progress, as someone still figuring it out. But your partner, you see them as the finished product. You see the version of them they bring to the relationship. You see their patience, their composure, their thoughtfulness. You don't have full access to their inner chaos yet. And so you line up your raw, unedited footage next to their polished highlight reel, and obviously, you come up short. But that comparison is completely unfair. It's not even comparing the same things. They have a behind the scenes too. They have thoughts they're embarrassed by, fears they haven't told you about yet, things they're working through, versions of themselves they're not proud of. They're just better at the lighting right now. Or maybe they've just had more time to get comfortable in their own skin. Or maybe, and this is actually the most common thing, they're showing you the same level of care and grace they wish someone would show them. Not because they're flawless, but because they like you. The comparison trap is a trap because it's using two completely different data sets and pretending they're equivalent. And when you're doing this in a relationship, you are essentially gaslighting yourself. And then there's reason number 4, and this one is the one that takes a little more courage to look at because it's the one that gets the most real. Sometimes the "they're too good for me" feeling is actually a defense mechanism, a way to keep one foot out the door before anything bad can happen. Here's how it works. If you tell yourself you're not worthy, if you convince yourself this isn't going to last, that you don't deserve it, that they'll eventually wise up, then you can start emotionally withdrawing a little, keeping some distance, not fully investing. And that way, if it does end, you saw it coming. You prepared. You weren't blindsided. You were the one who knew. It feels safer to be the person who knew it wouldn't last than to be the person who believed in it completely and got their heart broken. The problem is that this defense mechanism will 100% cause the thing you're afraid of, because you can't have real intimacy with one foot out the door. You can't build something lasting when you're already pre-grieving the ending. I came across this line online that really stuck with me. Someone said, "I push people away before they can hurt me." It's a defense mechanism, but it's so lonely. And that's exactly it. The protective distance that feels safe is also what keeps you from feeling truly connected. You're protecting yourself from a hurt that hasn't happened, while creating a different, quieter hurt that just never fully goes away. Vulnerability is terrifying. Letting someone fully in, trusting that they're going to stay, believing you deserve the love they're offering, that takes a kind of courage that nobody talks about enough. But the alternative is being in a relationship where you never really arrive, where you're always slightly braced, where you never get to find out what fully receiving love actually feels like. Okay, so now I want to slow down for a second and just say something really clearly because I think it matters. Feeling all of this, the insecurity, the waiting for the catch, the comparing yourself, the self-protective distance, it does not mean the relationship is wrong. It does not mean you are wrong. It means you care about something. And caring about something, really caring, the kind where losing it would genuinely hurt, is terrifying in a way that not caring never is. People who feel the most relationship anxiety are usually people who care the most, who feel the most, who have been through enough to know that love is not a given and that good things can end. That's not a flaw. That's just experience. And a heart that's been paying attention. The feelings are valid. What we have to be careful about is what we do with them. Because there's a version of this where you sit with the anxiety, you recognize it for what it is, you do the inner work, and you stay present in the good thing you have. And then there's a version where you let the anxiety steer, where you start picking fights to test if they'll leave, where you sabotage moments of closeness, where you read texts at 1 a.m. looking for evidence of the disaster you're convinced is coming. One of those versions leads somewhere really beautiful. The other, well, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the question isn't whether you'll feel this. You probably will. The question is whether you'll let it be information or whether you'll let it be the driver. And I really do believe the difference between those two paths starts with understanding what's actually happening. which is what we've been doing for the past few minutes, and what we're going to keep doing. All right, let's talk about the most practical stuff because I know some of you are lying in bed right now nodding along and going, okay, but what do I actually do with this? The first thing is about trust, and not just trust in them, trust in their taste. Here's what I mean. When you tell yourself your partner is too good for you, you're also, whether you realize it or not, telling yourself that they have bad judgment, that they don't know what they're doing, that somehow you see the situation more clearly than they do. And that is kind of a lot, right? This person is a fully grown adult. They chose you. Not by accident, not because they were confused, not because no one else was available. They looked at you, at your humor, your heart, the way you move through the world, the conversations you have, the way you make them feel, and they went, yes, that one, her. And you're sitting here going, they must not have thought it through. There's a kind of quiet arrogance and self-deprecation, actually, because you're overriding their judgment with your own insecurity and pretending it's humility. Trusting their agency means accepting that when they say you're amazing, they mean it. When they tell their friends about you, they mean it. When they choose to be here again and again, they mean it. Practice receiving compliments without putting a "but" at the end in your head. Not, you only think I'm funny because you haven't seen me on a bad day. Just, thank you. I'm really glad you feel that way. It sounds so small, but training yourself to receive love without immediately deflecting it or discounting it, that's actually one of the most powerful things you can do for a relationship. The second thing I really want to talk about is what I call humanizing the saint. Because here's what happens when we're in that "they're too good for me" headspace. We stop seeing our partner as a person. We start seeing them as this elevated, polished, perfect entity, like a Pinterest board that came to life. And then we feel like we're not even in a relationship with a human being anymore. We're in a relationship with an award we haven't earned. And the problem with that is you cannot be truly intimate with a statue. You can only be intimate with someone you see as real. Messy, complicated, three-dimensional real. So the homework here, and I know homework sounds annoying, but bear with me, is to start paying attention to the ways your partner is actually human. The places where they need you. The moments where they're unsure. The little quirks and flaws and fears that remind you they're a work in progress too. Maybe they overthink big decisions. Maybe they get weirdly stressed when they're hungry. Maybe they have an ex situation that still makes them insecure. Maybe they need your reassurance sometimes too, they just ask for it differently. Letting yourself see those things isn't about finding flaws for the sake of it. It's about releasing them from the impossible pedestal you've put them on, which, by the way, also releases you from the impossible pressure of measuring up to a pedestal version of someone. When you see them as fully human, you're also allowing yourself to be fully human around them. And that's where the real relationship lives. Not in the performance. In the realness. The third thing is about knowing your value. And I want to talk about this one for a little while, because I think it's the most underestimated piece of all of this. When we feel like our partner is out of our league, we're usually measuring by really obvious things. Maybe they make more money. Maybe they have a more impressive job title, or they're more conventionally attractive, or they have a larger social circle, or they just seem more put together in some external way. And we're over here like, I have none of those things. What am I bringing to this? But here's the thing. People don't fall in love with your resume. People don't stay in relationships because of the metrics you measure yourself by at 2 a.m. when you're spiraling. Most people choose a partner based on how they feel around that person. The sense of safety, the ease of conversation, the way that person makes them laugh, or sees them, or challenges them, or calms them down. The things that are completely invisible on paper, but are everything in person. And you bring those things. You bring them so specifically and so uniquely that they literally chose you over everyone else who was available to them. So the exercise I actually recommend, and this is from the Bissful post, is to write down 3 things you bring to the relationship that have nothing to do with external success. Not your job, not your appearance, not your income. Your humor. The way you make them feel seen. The way you notice small things about them. The way you show up when things are hard. Those things are real. Those things matter enormously. And they are yours. You are not the charity case in this relationship. You are not a project they're taking on out of generosity. You are a whole person contributing something irreplaceable. Okay, I want to take a little detour here because I've been talking about all the ways this too good for me feeling is about our own internal stuff, and that's mostly true. But I also want to talk about the times when it's not. Because sometimes that feeling is actually your gut trying to tell you something real. And I think it's important that we talk about the difference. There's a version of this where someone is genuinely kind, patient, consistent, and grounded, and your fear is entirely internal, a product of your own past experiences and self-worth struggles. That's what we've been talking about. But there's also a version where the too good feeling is actually a response to something that is off in the relationship. And knowing the difference matters. So, here are some things to actually pay attention to. If someone is showering you with excessive gifts and attention and declarations of love really early on, that can sometimes be love bombing, which is a way of moving the relationship to a serious place very quickly, often before you've had the chance to really know them. And that intensity can feel like devotion when it's actually about control or attachment anxiety on their end. If they treat you like you're absolutely perfect and then get cold or disappointed when you show any kind of normal human flaw, they're not in love with you. They're in love with the version of you they built in their head. And the moment real you shows up, you'll feel it. If they make little comments, even jokey ones, about how lucky you are to have them. If there's a subtle keeping score. If you always feel like you owe them something. That's not love. That's an ego. And if they never fight, not because you're genuinely aligned, but because they go completely silent and distant when there's conflict, that's not peace. That's avoidance. And it will become a real problem. Your gut knows the difference between, I'm scared because I care, and something actually isn't right here. Learning to listen to the difference is one of the most important skills in dating. I want to come back to something that I think is the heart of all of this, because I feel like we've covered the why and the what to do, but I want to sit in the feeling a little more before we wrap up. There's something that someone wrote online that I keep thinking about. They said, it's the fear of feeling too happy. Because if things are this good, there's no way it can last. And if I let myself fully enjoy this, I have something special to lose. And I feel that so deeply. I think so many of us feel that. We have this strange relationship with happiness where the better things get, the more exposed we feel. Because joy requires vulnerability. Being fully happy means fully caring. And fully caring means you can be fully hurt. So we hold back a little. We don't let ourselves completely land in the good thing. We keep a tiny piece of ourselves in reserve just in case. Insurance against the potential heartbreak. But here's what I've learned and what I keep coming back to. The version of you that holds back doesn't actually protect you from getting hurt if it ends. You'll still be devastated. You'll still grieve. The distance didn't prevent the feeling. It just meant you spent the whole relationship slightly outside of it. The other shoe, it might drop one day. Or it might not. But the 85% of things we spend our energy worrying about never actually happen. The cost of living in perpetual anticipation of disaster is that you miss the actual experience of the good thing while you're in it. What if you let yourself be in it fully without the insurance policy and just saw what happened? I also want to talk about something that I think is really related to all of this, but nobody brings up enough, which is what this kind of insecurity does to your partner over time. Because it's not just something that happens inside your head. It has an impact on the relationship. And I think it's worth being honest about that. When you're in that headspace, when you're constantly waiting for the catch, constantly discounting their love, constantly keeping a little bit of distance, your partner feels it. Even if they can't name it, even if they don't say anything. They try to show you you're loved and the message doesn't fully land. They try to reassure you and it works for a moment, but then you're back in the same place. They keep showing up and they keep getting a version of you that isn't quite fully present. And over time that can be exhausting for them. Not because they stop caring, but because it's hard to love someone who won't let the love in. I read something from a person who said, "I was so insecure in my relationship that I ruined it by constantly needing reassurance. And every time they gave it, it only helped for a day. Because the problem wasn't them. It was me." And that's the honest truth of it. The reassurance from your partner can only ever be a temporary fix if the root issue is internal. They can keep telling you you're wonderful. But if some part of you doesn't believe it's true, you'll be back in the same spiral tomorrow. The work, the real, lasting work, has to happen inside you. It's about building a relationship with yourself where you feel like you are enough. Not perfect. Not without your stuff, but enough. Worthy of being chosen. Capable of being loved without a catch. That's not something your partner can do for you, but it is something you can do. Slowly. Intentionally. With a lot of grace toward yourself along the way. So let's talk about what that actually looks like in practice. Because I don't want to just leave you with do the inner work and disappear into the void. The first thing, and this is so simple it almost sounds too small, is to start noticing the story you're telling yourself. Not to stop having the thoughts, just to notice them. When you feel that wave of they're too good for me or when are they going to leave, instead of running with it, try catching it. Name it. Oh, there's that thought again. There's my nervous system doing its thing. You don't have to believe every thought you think. Thoughts are not facts. And a lot of the time, the thoughts we have about ourselves and relationships are just old tapes playing. Old programming from experiences that shaped us. Not current truth. The second thing is to build your sense of self-worth outside of the relationship. Because if the relationship is the only place you feel valuable, then of course the idea of losing it is catastrophic. Of course you're hypervigilant. Of course you keep waiting for it to be taken away. What are the things you do, the people you are around, the ways you show up in your own life that make you feel like yourself, feel capable, feel seen, feel alive, that have nothing to do with this person? Those things matter. A lot. Not because the relationship doesn't matter, but because a whole version of you is a much safer place to love from. And the third thing, and I've said this a few times but it bears repeating, is to actually practice receiving. When they do something kind, let it in. When they say something loving, don't deflect. Sit with it. Let it be true, even if it's just for 10 seconds before your brain tries to discount it. Those 10 seconds are practice. And practice becomes a habit. And habits become your new normal. We're getting close to the end now, and I want to use this last part to just sit with you for a minute. Like, actually sit with you. Because I think a lot of people listening to this tonight are people who have been through something. Maybe a relationship that hurt them in ways they didn't fully see coming. Maybe a pattern of loving people who didn't love them back the way they deserved. Maybe a childhood where love felt conditional or unpredictable, and their nervous system just never really fully recovered from learning that love could disappear. And then someone came along who was genuinely good. who is consistent, who is kind, who actually sees you. And instead of being able to just rest in that, the old programming kicks in. Because safety feels unfamiliar. Because peace feels suspicious. Because being fully loved and letting yourself believe it, that requires you to be more vulnerable than you've ever been. That is not weakness. I want to say that really clearly. That is not you being broken or damaged or too much. That is a person who has loved deeply, been shaped by what happened, and is now learning in real time, often awkwardly, how to do something genuinely hard, which is to let themselves be loved without waiting for the penalty. And I think you're doing better than you think you are. I really do. The fact that you're here at whatever time it is thinking about this stuff, trying to understand yourself in relationships, that already means you care. That you're paying attention. That you're not just on autopilot. That matters. I want to leave you with something I wrote at the end of the Bissful post that I think is the truest thing I've said about any of this. The only way someone is actually too good for someone else is if one person is treating the other person poorly. That's it. That's the only real version of that story. If they're choosing you, every day, showing up, being present, being kind, then you are not the lesser half of this relationship. You are a person who is genuinely loved, and that love is yours. You don't have to earn it every morning. You don't have to perform for it. You don't have to hold your breath waiting for it to be taken away. You deserve a love that feels like a safe harbor, not a stage where you're always performing, not an audition you're always in danger of failing. You deserve someone who looks at your mess, your real mess, your 3 a.m. stuff, your complicated history, your very human imperfections, and says, yes, exactly. That's exactly what I was looking for. And if you have that right now, even if it scares you, even if you're waiting for the catch, even if your nervous system doesn't fully believe it yet, let yourself have it. Let yourself really fully have it. Because the love that you keep at arm's length to protect yourself is still love. It still costs. But it doesn't give you back the warmth. Let it be warm. You've earned that. Sweet dreams, okay? I'll be here when you need to talk.